with starting any job, there are things that you probably want to know in advance that will help you have a smoother starting process. And that's just the same with teaching ESL Online. There are certain things that if I was to go back and start again, I would want to know about before teaching my first lesson. And that's what I'm hoping that today's session is going to help you with. I want to share these things that I wish I knew to help you have a much smoother, happier starting point with your career. Hi, my name's Catherine and I'm from the OET. I help support people, especially mums, start and succeed with their online ESL teaching career that they can do from home around their families. And today's session is all about what I wish I knew with starting teaching ESL online. So let's dive straight in. Now, one of the most important things that I have talked about in some other sessions is you are self-employed. You are not employed by the company. You are a freelancer on a self-employed contract. And what that means is that you are solely responsible for income tax, for covering your sick days, for covering holidays, any gaps between bookings. You are not paid a monthly salary. You are only paid for the classes that you have actually taught. So if you are sick or maybe there's an emergency in hospital, maybe something's happened in the family and you need to take some time off suddenly, you won't be paid for those days. So you need to be saving some of your income aside for days when you need to take time off for emergencies. Similarly with holidays, if you want to take a week or two off from teaching online, you are not going to be paid or covered holiday leave by the company. You're 100% responsible for covering your lost income whilst you're away on holiday. So it's really important to understand and know about that. And one of the most important elements of the fact that you are on a self-employed contract is that the company does not submit your tax forms for you. You are in charge and responsible for your tax and notifying your government of your tax and paying your tax as well on time. And if you don't comply with the country that you're in's rules and regulations surrounding self-employed tax, you could be in a lot of trouble and you could end up with quite serious fines. So this is a bit of a steep learning curve, treating this employed position as a teacher working for a company, but as if you were running your own business, because you are not employed. You're a self-employed contract, you're an independent contractor hired by the company. So these are things that you need to take note of and prepare for in advance. And when I first started out, I didn't know about any of this. I knew I had to sign up as a self-employed person with my own business, a sole trader within the UK. But I didn't think about, I would have a tax bill at the end of the year to pay for, or I needed to submit my forms by a certain date, or I'd get fined and things like that. These were things that I had to learn on the go, and I picked up and I learned in quite a harsh, lesson. I was getting penalties and fines from HMRC, which is our tax organization in the UK who manages all the tax collection. So I learned the hard way. So please do learn from my mistakes. Make sure that you are aware of the legislation in your company. Make sure that you're putting aside money every single month towards your tax, and also a percentage for those sick days and covering holiday leave as well. So you have time off paid. You don't have to worry. You don't have to continue working every single week all year. You can take some time off so that you're not burning out as an online teacher. Something else that I recommend, although it's quite costly, but has saved me numerous times within my career, is to have a backup teaching device. And I know that it's quite contradictory because I always say, don't spend out thousands and thousands of dollars just to set up your equipment as an online ESL teacher. And I still stand by that. But if you do have access to maybe an older device, or perhaps you live with a partner and you can borrow their device, it's really important to have a secondary device. I have started to set up my lessons for a day and then suddenly my laptop has just cut out and died. Like, bear in mind, like, I use my laptops every single day, and they are well used, they're well loved, but they're well used, and I keep my laptops for probably 4 to 6 years. Laptops do not have a good lifespan, so they can have problems and they can cut out suddenly. And it just so happened that my old laptop decided to die right at the time of me starting my day's worth of lessons. Great! Panic! But luckily I had my husband's Mac. He has a Mac. I don't like Macs, but he has a Mac, and I had the platform already downloaded on his device as well as my own, so I could simply switch it out, turn his on, connect all of the things that I needed to do, like my headset, and I was ready for the day. I didn't have to panic, and I didn't have to lose any income because I didn't have a device to teach on. So although it's a little bit contradictory to what I recommend in terms of keep it budget friendly until you know and you're confident you want to do this as a long-term career, if you do have access to maybe an old device or somebody else's device as a backup option, I highly recommend this because it can really save you some pennies and fines down the line. Something that I would have liked to have known so that I could prepare for mentally is that you might end up teaching the same lessons over and over and over again. And honestly, that can be actually more draining than teaching different lessons, because it's mind-numbingly boring. It's so dull teaching the same class over and over and over and over and over again. But if you're not careful, it can then lead to you becoming quite a bad teacher because you're not putting in the effort with this lesson, because it's like, oh, here we go again, I've got to teach this. Apple, banana. So you're not putting the same enthusiasm in for your new students as you would have done for previous students when you first started teaching this material. So it's really important that you are aware early on that you could be teaching the same lesson multiple times, sometimes multiple times in the same week. So it is repetitive, but there are advantages to this, which is where we can protect our mental health, because there is a reason for having these repeated classes. Most of the time, the repeated classes are trial classes, but it could be that you have regular book students who are the same level in different classes. So you could still be teaching the same long-term lesson materials multiple times in a week. The good news is that if you do have repetitive classes, it does help you become comfortable with the lesson materials very, very quickly. You're seeing the same slides week in, week out. You know what's coming. There's no surprises. And it means that you're able to actually expand on that material to adapt your lessons based on the students and how they're getting along with it. So you can make the lessons more interesting and make them more challenging for yourself as a teacher by incorporating different ideas, resources, and activities alongside the material the company provides for you. With that, because you're teaching the same class over and over and over again, not only are you comfortable with the material, but your confidence in your ability to teach is growing much more quickly too, versus teaching 10 different classes in the same week. So you're becoming much better teacher, faster, and your lessons are much smoother because you already anticipate what's coming next rather than unfamiliar, unknown resources and materials. So even though it can be repetitive, there are ways to protect your mental health by adding additional materials and resources. And then you can actually end up enjoying that familiarity rather than, oh, here we go again, eye roll, which is what I did when I first started out, because I didn't know this could be a thing where I was teaching the same class 10 times a week. So now you know, now you can feel prepared. Next, in line with this, is to always have backup activities. Now, sometimes the companies do get it wrong and they don't match the student with the right level materials. So the mismatch means that the materials could be too easy or too challenging for the students. If it's too easy, the students are going to race through that material. They're going to be bored and disengaged. It doesn't challenge them, so it's not progressing their English skills, but also you've covered the whole lesson's materials in 10 minutes. You've got the rest of the lesson to fill out now. What do? If a lesson is too difficult for your students, you have the opposite. They become disengaged because it's so challenging. What's the point in even bothering to try? It could take you forever just to get through one slide of that material when your company expects you to do 10 slides in a lesson. So then you're penalized and you're given bad negative feedback because you haven't progressed the student as fast as the parents are expecting or the company's expecting. So it's important to have some backup activities that's going to help ensure that your students are engaged, but these activities can be adjusted and adapted really easily for any kind of topic that you might be teaching. It's good to have a variety of activities that focus on comprehension, reading skills and phonics, vocabulary, some fun games to incorporate learning in as well, conversation skills, all of these different elements. So you've got this backlog that you can just take an activity and use it within your class, and you're not having to think. You're not having to waste time thinking on your feet. What could we do next? What could we do next? Panicking, flustered in this class. You can think, okay, my student's not getting that. Let's use this activity to teach that instead. Oh, my students finished this. It's too easy. Let's use that activity to challenge them and assess what they actually know and what we could do next. Finally, a big lesson that I learned very early on is about cultural awareness. So when I first started teaching, I was teaching Chinese students, and I didn't know anything much about China. I'd visited China before with a friend years ago. We went backpacking for 6 weeks. It was such a phenomenal experience. I love China and I'd love to go back. It's such a friendly place, beautiful country, really amazing. I highly recommend. But in terms of cultural awareness for a lesson with students, I hadn't got a clue. No idea whatsoever. And I hadn't spent time researching about it either. I just showed up to class. But what happened was I ended up doing something rude. I was pointing to the students on screen, and obviously the students themselves weren't telling me this. They weren't saying, oh, you can't do that, da 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 da. But I actually was doing this in every single class. Or how are you? What's that? What are you doing? I'm pointing at them and didn't realize I was being incredibly rude. And I didn't know about it until I had heard another teacher explain not to point to students in China because it's considered very rude to point directly at a person. And then I thought, oh my goodness, this whole time I have been pointing to every single student. How rude could I possibly be? So it's really good idea to not do that and to actually spend time researching. It just takes a couple of minutes who it is you're going to be teaching. So let's say that your company is based on students in Latin America. So you could research the cultural differences there. What do they see as rude? What do they see as polite and courteous? And incorporate that within your lessons, making sure you're avoiding anything that could be seen as disrespectful. So of course, since I learned that, I no longer pointed and I would use hand gestures instead, or I would point in different directions, not directly at a person. So I make sure to use that as a correction rather than a criticism, and improve my lessons going on forward. So these cultural awarenesses can help build good relationships, and even learning a little bit of their local language, their native language as well, could be seen as really polite. I know you're teaching English, but if you have a student who has zero English vocabulary, then it can be really intimidating to be spoken to in English the whole time. So learning a couple of vocabulary words or greetings in their native tongue can help them just ease and relax into the lesson, and they're ready to listen to you then. So one example is a trial class that I taught in the beginning over and over and over again. I was picking up that the parents were saying words in Chinese to their children for the words that I was saying in English, and I was picking up particular vocabulary words. So then when I had future students who were very little, very young, very shy and nervous in class, they didn't want to participate, I would say the English word and then I would say the Chinese word to them as well. And then they were like, oh, whoa, you speak Chinese? And then they would engage and speak the English word eventually within the class. So just learning those couple of native tongue words or greetings can really help ease your students into the lesson and build a positive relationship with them. You're taking time to learn about them, to show them respect and courtesy in class. And that really does go a long, long way to build a positive relationship with you as their teacher and build that trust as well. So let's just recap this session all together. Things that I wish somebody had told me when I was first starting teaching. Making sure that you plan for your tax in advance and keeping a separate little kitty money box for savings for emergencies and holiday fund. Make sure that you have a backup device. If anything was to go wrong on your device, you've then lost income because you cannot teach. So have a backup device ready to go. Some lessons are repetitive, especially in the early days of your career when you're teaching lots and lots of trial classes. You're probably teaching the same class over and over and over again, and it can get tedious, but hang in there because it's going to improve your confidence so much and your ability to teach as well. Make sure you have some activities available that can be adapted for any kind of topic, level, and learner. And be aware of cultural differences so that you're not accidentally disrespectful in your classes. And all of these things will really help your lessons run much more smoothly and easier than if you didn't know about these before. I hope you've enjoyed today's session. If you need a bit more support about teaching ESL Online as a career, then check out my free membership, the Mini ESL Teacher Toolkit. Inside, I've got guides on teaching ESL Online. I've got some support so you can identify some transferable skills that you might already have to be a great teacher. And I even have a mini job board so you can find some companies that are hiring right now. Thanks so much, friends. I will see you next time. Bye.